Hey, Connor. Long time no
Hello,
talk. I'm
how
excited.
things going?
It's good, man. It's good. I feel like November was the biggest month of the year, and I'm really excited to recap it. Like I've got this beard. I haven't had time to shave. There's been so much going on, and congratulations to you, Mr. Homeowner.
Yes. We got the move done. I got my office set up, or like kind of set up. So yes, I'm very stoked. To be honest, I'm mostly stoked knowing that I don't have to move again for a while, because for the last like 13 years of my life, I've like pretty much just moved every single time, like every 12 months. So knowing that I'm going to be able to settle down now in my old age is very, very good.
So everyone joining, make sure to let Connor know what he should put in his background because it's gonna stay the same for a while. So,
Yes.
what plans do folks want? Backgrounds now, like Connor's in planning mode. So give him the tips, give him the what he needs to make his flat look good.
Exactly. Leave it in the comments. I'm going to use that as my like feedback wall.
So we've got a bunch of folks. We've got Ranjan, Fraser, Megan, Colleen, Joseph, Joel here with us. So much to cover. Folks first want to know if you're going to change chairs. I think it's already been much better here, Connor. It's much less squiggly
Yeah.
than it was before.
So, funny story. When I moved, I actually realized that there was a screw that was not in there that had come loose at the very beginning of me moving in. And that's why it was squeaky. So I just screwed it in again. It was as simple as that.
Amazing. Well, we all appreciate it. Thank you from Colleen and from myself for having a proper chair now. So, okay. So today we've got, obviously we're going to start with NoCode Conf. Wanted to highlight a few projects that caught our eye last month. And then, Connor and I met someone who kind of built something for us that we thought blew our mind absolutely. So we're excited to show you. And then this is kind of the I don't know if the round robin is right. I'm losing my words here, but just the kind of whatever we want to cover last. So there were some no code jobs, and we want to talk about some projects for 2022. And yeah, let us know in the chat if you've got any questions, things you want us to cover. We're happy to amend, update, remove any item from the agenda. So Connor, yeah, like no code conf. What did you think? I'll let you summarize, and then I have some thoughts as well.
Okay, so like it was pretty awesome. Like, okay, I think the main thing that I'd say about the NoCode conference was after they moved to online, I was kind of like, seriously, how good can an online conference realistically be, especially like compared to the actual live event? Like, I always have to think back to the actual live event that we went to in 2019, which was really awesome. So I was really looking forward to that. And so when they had to move it online, and like, of course, they had to move it online, it made complete sense. It was kind of a bit like, you know, let's just see. But I must honestly say that it was like a real good experience. So first of all, the conference itself was awesome. Like the keynote was great. The different speakers were great. But also, and I think this is like, I think you can't shout out these boys enough, but like what the FinSuite team and Raymar did with that Gather Town before the actual event is like made basically gave me that like networking feeling that you got from that live event, before you actually went in. And it was awesome. I met a whole bunch of people, and Gather Town's quite cool for that, but it made the entire experience really good. So I think just the overall experience of the NoCode conference this year was like really great and exceeded my expectations by quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. What were some highlights for you of the like? We're going to talk about logic. We're going to talk about memberships. But what were some talks that caught your eye, or beyond what Webflow launched? What were some highlights for you?
Well, I went in. So on the first day, I went and watched Leslie Kessler's talk, which I thought was awesome. I mean, she made like so many good points. I think that if you're like getting into the no code world, you should just check that out because it's just a real good primer in terms of like the kind of things that you should like focus on. I also went and watched Curtis Cummings' talk. I found that really interesting. I mean, obviously, some of the stuff that he's doing over at On Deck is like really advanced. So, just getting his perspective on like the operation side of running like your business on no code, I found really interesting. And then also I went and checked out some of Timothy Rick's stuff. I follow some of his YouTube content, and I just kind of wanted to see a bit about, what he was like about his talk on microsites. And I found it also like really interesting. Like his stuff is like really good as it is, but just from a very Webflow centric perspective, I thought that was really good. I've rewatched a few other ones
Mhm.
since. I watched the one on imposter syndrome, which I think had a
Mm.
good few good talking points. Um, and there are like a whole bunch of additional ones that I want to check out. Like John Saunders ones. Like I actually got one of his courses on standard operating procedures for me next year. Like I want to really standardize a lot of things. And so I've been following them on Twitter, have taken, I got one of his courses, and so I'm going to watch that talk as well. But I think all around what I'd say is like just such a good range of speakers who all kind of had something different to bring to the table, and the production quality of it as well was really good. Also, your talk was fantastic, Aaron.
Yours was okay
Hyping up
too.
that chat.
uh, so thanks to everyone who joined my talk or Connor's talk. It was very heartwarming seeing you all defend Airtable in the chat. I appreciate that, but don't feel like you have to. But no, and I totally agree. I think the only thing I think was a challenge for me, and I'm curious to know what people thought, was like because it was online, I couldn't like not be at work, right? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
I still had meetings, and I still had like, I couldn't be like, I'm at a conference, and they're like, no, actually you're at home. Like you're not at the conference. You are, and that's probably just poor management on my end. I did think back to 2019. I had a photo with Colleen and Raymar, and I think we met as well on the pier there, Connor. And so I
Yeah.
think I don't think we can create those types of relationships or meeting points online as well, right, as we do in person. But I think the Webflow team did a fantastic job of trying to get as close as possible to that feeling. And
Mhm.
huge hats off to them. I think it's so difficult. So I'd love to know in the chat, like, what are your different highlights? My favorite talk was the imposter syndrome one, primarily because you think like I stream every week, but it took me about 50 streams to feel comfortable doing this. And so if I had listened to that talk maybe 40 streams ago, it would have taken me a lot shorter. And so I'm actually reading the book that speaker recommended, and I'll let you guys know how it goes. But okay, so let us know in the chat what are your highlights, if there's any talks that you felt were really, really good. And we'll make sure to add those to the show notes. But I think, Connor, I don't know what you think, but I think the highlight of NoCode Talk was the keynote, obviously, but was what was delivered or talked about in the keynote. So Webflow is launching Logic memberships and improve load time for large websites.
Mhm.
I think we both have not a bone to pick, but we both have a interest in those. You probably more memberships, and me more like Logic. So what were your thoughts around what Webflow launched during NoCode Conf?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone saw memberships coming. So they had announced it. So I think we all knew that was going to be a big part of like the announcement. What I liked about it is they gave us a bit more of an insight into what it could look like. They had a few additional demos. So like kind of the big question mark in terms of what will be involved with it was they kind of addressed some of those things in the conference. So that looks really good. Again, not that many people have access to it yet that I know of. So again, it's very hard to comment on whether it's good or not. I was personally kind of hoping that they would launch the beta a bit more widely by now, but
Mm.
each to their own. Do it whenever you feel you're ready. Logic. So Logic, they actually reached out to me a few months ago to give them UX feedback on Logic. So I knew it was coming, but I saw the very early stages of it. And so at the time, I was kind of a bit like, they definitely still need to do a bit of work on this. But these screenshots look super promising. Initially, I was concerned that it was going to be very Webflow focused, but they
Mm-hmm.
added webhooks, which I think is going to be super important. So I'm excited to see how that fits into my overall workflows. I think one thing to keep in mind is we've got a lot of different automation tools. I still feel like um yeah, it's to be seen how it will fit in overall. I think people who don't want to use Zapier, don't want to use Integromat will love this. There'll be a lot of good things that you can do with this without having to use any additional tool. But the feature that I was, or the announcement that I was personally like pretty excited about was the CMS improvements,
Mm-hmm.
because I think the CMS improvements as a whole has been something that people have wanted to see addressed, especially like people who use the CMS quite heavily. I think that there's like no denying that there have been issues with the Webflow CMS as you add more collections to your CMS. And, you know, even though they didn't announce things like lifting the 10,000 CMS limit, I think making these changes now is going to set the foundations for a lot of those things to come. So, yeah, I mean, positive, like really excited about those features, but we'll need to have a play with them first before I can like really judge it.
So what are the CMS improvements? Because like I think the expectation or the hope was okay, no 10K limit, and I couldn't find a landing page for like CMS improvement. Is it just faster load time? Is it filtering? What is your understanding of what they actually launched?
Yeah, so as you start to add more CMS items, you definitely start to see your designer lag. Like
Mm-hmm.
things just take longer. Like publishing sites take longer, loading
Mm-hmm.
pages inside of the designer takes longer. So, like the more items that you have inside of your CMS, the more noticeable it is. Um, and obviously, if you run like a standard blog, you're not going to come across those issues as much. But I've definitely seen some of it with the Unicorn Factory. And, even though it's not like it's never been to the point where I'm like, this is unusable, I have kind of been wary of adding more and more items to my CMS because it makes it pretty difficult to actually use the designer when it lags as much as it does.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what I think they're addressing here. Just overall performance improvements. And I think that I think this is going to cater mostly to people that use the CMS quite heavily. And I'm
Right.
one of those people, which is why I'm particularly excited about it.
I just like to hear you say the acronym CMS. It's like a different word. It's like CMS. I can't say it like you do, but it's a different acronym. Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder, and this is what I find so interesting about these announcements, and I wrote about in the newsletter this morning is like who are they for, right? So like Logic is a really good examples. Do I expect Webflow to manage automations writ large for all of my workflows? Not really. Just like I don't expect YouTube or Contentful or any other, or like Twitter, to be honest, to manage like automations for me, right? Like for me, Webflow is a repository of where information ends up. Now, for a lot of people, it is like a huge workflow, right? So I do have the expectation of having some automations. So what I'm curious about is like, are they gonna create, really complex, super like, can I send it to MailChimp natively? What about every other email marketing service? Or are they kind of gonna go halfway and create like escape valves, right? So the ability to send webhooks and receive webhooks, well, that solves like 85% of the problems because I can configure that and I can use it regardless of if they have a native automation. But if they're like, okay, we're going after HubSpot, right? And we want to create this like really advanced automations and email marketing landing pages that are super, super customized and bunch of things happening in the back end. Well, I'm like, that's really interesting, but are you really going to beat HubSpot at it? And so what I'm really curious about is how are they going to take memberships, Logic, their CMS and Webflow generally and be like, Webflow is great for this type of user today, and we're going to expand that type of user over time. And I think like Logic is a good example of that. For me, this spells like, okay, we're going to really invest into this. We've built out Logic right from the branch, like built out branches right from the beginning. But I'd love to see like, okay, we're going to have 10, 15, 20 connections in the next year or things like that. So I can truly be like, okay, this is what they're going after. And then me as a user, I can be like, this is not for me or this is for me. And really, that's what I felt like was missing. And I'm curious to kind of hear what you think, Connor, in terms of that gripe that I have of like, who's this for? But maybe I should just be excited that it exists and I'm excited to use it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, all good points. I kind of feel like this is like the start of like something that's probably part of the bigger roadmap for them. I think that like I think maybe not in the last NoCode, in between the last two NoCode conferences, they had like another event, another Webflow
Mm-hmm.
event, where they basically talked about how they want to allow people to build sites like Product Hunt and like like these are features that you will ultimately need natively. Because like I know we love our Integromats and we love our Zapiers, but like, those tool in itself are like new things to learn. And I think that having this um internally or like as a native integration will bring more people in because you have to ask yourself like what are typically deal breakers for people using Webflow. And I think memberships is a massive one, especially
Mm,
when it comes to like Webflow e-commerce. That's a huge one.
right.
And logic is an inconvenience, I think, to a lot of people. I think a lot of people out there know that Zapier is a thing, Integromat is a thing, but I think a lot of people are just like, really, I'm paying this much for this platform and I can't even like automate simple things. And so
Right.
I kind of feel like they're addressing some things that might be deal breakers across like multiple different customer segments. So that is kind of why I think they might be going down this path. And it also realistically moves them from a website building tool to an app building platform in a lot of ways. So that's another thing as well.
So I agree with you. And I think that like, and I'm going to end here because I think it's like, it's a gripe that I have and I have for a lot of no code tools is like, Product Hunt is cool for Product Hunt, right? Like how many Product Hunt type like app builders do we need, right? And
Mhm.
so like I actually don't think a lot of users care that much if they're able on Webflow to build Hunt type like experiences, right? You know, their desires are more narrow. It's like if someone submits a form, can I create a CMS item? Do you need to build full blown logic to do that? I don't know. It's a good question. If you are going to build a full blown logic type interface, like who is that for? What use cases do you see in your user base that either are solved here or that you'd like to expand on, right? So for me, like these are amazing as like a user, but generally
Mm.
I'm always curious of like, okay, well, sorry. Last thing, I'm just gonna do this, and then I'm gonna drop it after this. So, like, if salary is greater than 80,000, like for me, that's like lead routing, right? That's like saying, okay, if we get a lead, and we're gonna augment that lead, and we're gonna do like lead augmentation and lead scoring, like that's a huge surface area, right?
Mhm.
And that's going into places like HubSpot and these companies that have been working on that for ages. That's super interesting. Like as a business person, right? Is that what Webflow wants? I'm not sure, right? So I'm really
Mhm.
curious to see how this evolves, and I hope that they build like escape valves, like webhooks. But also, I hope they like really clarify who this is for. Like, hey, we're just going to limit to things that are in Webflow and then do whatever you want. Or no, this is like a huge surface area that we're going to invest in over the next 5, 7, 10 years, so that we can do email marketing automation and things like that, and start moving your workflow to Webflow.
Mhm.
All right, we've got FinSuite in the house. Welcome, team. Hey, Joe.
One last thing that I'd say about that, I
Yeah.
actually agree with you that like I usually get quite skeptical about like companies branching out into too many different directions. And like I'm just gonna say it before I get too much hate. I feel like that is what Bubble did. Like
Right.
they tackled multiple different directions at the same time. But it's but I must say that Webflow has done the one thing that is like the core thing, which is to build great websites in it really well, which
I
means
agree.
I actually don't mind that they're adding these things. And I
I
actually
agree.
feel like, you know what, maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't use it. I feel like there's no downside to having something like this in there. I also feel like it's going to create some exciting opportunities. And it's the same thing with Airtable. Like Airtable, great database building tool. No one asked them for like automations or apps, or maybe people did, but those are like amazing additions on top of an already great product. And I
Right.
feel like that is what's happening here with Webflow. So I personally think that it's promising. Whether or not I end up using it is a completely different story. For me, the biggest thing with Logic is going to be like, how easy is it going to be to work with other apps, and
Right.
how easy, yeah. And so that is something that is still like a bit in the open. I mean, but I think overall, I think people will use it, people will enjoy it, and I think it is also going to draw more people in.
Yeah. Okay. Recap. I think we've said all we could say. I'm really excited to see the direct connections, what escape valves get put in, and honestly, like I'm going to use it. I'm excited to use it, and I'm excited to show off. So the second they give me the option to, I'll come on the stream. We'll build, and we'll build some cool automations. Cool. All right. I think that's a good recap of NoCode Conf. Huge thanks again to Webflow for putting it on. It was a great event. And I think it's like a bar for online events going forward. So great job to Webflow. If anyone from Webflow is watching, hats off to you guys. You've done an amazing job. Cool. Are we ready, Connor, for the next or projects of the month?
Yep.
Amazing. Okay. So this is actually a project that I wanted to highlight, which is called Hey, It's Harold. So this is actually built in AutoCode. So if folks, I'm curious to know what people think. Like, is AutoCode a no-code tool? Because AutoCode is like it's more of an kind of coding environment that simplifies APIs. So you have one API to use a bunch of others. But what Hey, It's Harold does is that it's a texting app for habits, right? So you can say like, hey, every day I want to read 10 pages. And Harold will text you every day to say like, hey, did you do the thing you promised to do? And you can answer it. It'll interpret your answer and then kind of give you insights into how successful you are at tracking your habits. The reason I wanted to highlight this is, one, and most importantly, it is not a goddamn marketplace. So Connor, you're the man, but there are other things you
I
can
have
build with
nothing to
no-code
add.
tools.
I don't know what I can say about this.
You got nothing. If it's not a marketplace, who cares? And second, I think it's actually like, something that I'm super excited about, and you're super excited about, is this idea of low code, right? So this idea of putting your backend in Airtable or simplifying a database structure and writing a bit of code, right, to be able to create really cool applications. So AutoCode is a little bit of this middle layer, which just makes coding really, really easy. So you don't have to worry about things like authentication with different libraries. Like you could just connect to Slack, and it'll handle the OAuth for you, right? I do have a few streams with AutoCode where we built a Discord bot. Slight tip to anyone creating content out there: if you create content around Discord bots, you're going to get users that are very different from no coders. I've got a bunch of, I think, 16, 17-year-olds trying to get into streaming, watching that stream. But it is a super interesting tool that definitely makes coding much easier. So definitely do kind of invite everyone to check it out, and check out Hey, It's Harold if you want an idea of what an app that is not a marketplace can do that's built with low code.
Love it.
So what habits, Connor, are you trying to get better at that you can use Hey, It's Harold for?
I need to. Oh, good question. You should have warned me about it. I could have come up with a better answer than I'm probably going to give. Maybe like keeping up making my YouTube videos.
Dude,
that's one.
you're like a professional. Like, you never miss a week. That's definitely not something you need help staying up to date with.
But the thing is, how I do actually track my habits is with like a normal journal. So that's kind of how I'm making it happen.
Mm.
But like, I don't know, maybe drinking water is a good one. That's
Mm.
one that I need. That's a habit worth building, I think.
I agree. So folks, if you give it a try, let me know how it goes. I don't know if I have a habit. Like weirdly, like I've started rock climbing, so I need to like treat my hands with lotion. So maybe that's a habit. Like every 6 hours, text me and be like, "Yo, have you lathered your hands so that they don't hurt every day?" Cool. Okay. So that was the project of the month. Every month, if you have an interesting project you want us to show off, the tip I have is just spam me on Twitter. Just literally at me and be like, yo, can you showcase my project? And the answer will probably be yes, eventually. So that was our project of the month. Okay, Connor, this is our next one, which is custom Integromat apps. And I know you're particularly kind of excited about this. So I'll let you kind of recap how we learned about custom Integromat apps. So as context here, I don't use Integromat. I mainly use Zapier, and I know that every time I say that, there's like 10 people in the chat like, why don't you use Integromat? Integromat is the best thing ever. But for this particular use case, I'm super, super excited. So with that, Connor, I'll let you kind of talk to us about what we learned.
Yeah. So, as YouTubers, there are obviously a lot of different things involved with getting our videos online. And obviously, there's a lot of manual stuff that has to be done. So, just so that everyone kind of has like a little bit of an idea of what the actual workflow looks like of like publishing a video is once you film it, you have to upload it, you have to add your descriptions, then you have to add like your timestamps and a whole bunch of different things. And most tools out there, like most automation tools, actually don't have a native YouTube integration, which means you end up having to do this manually. Like Zapier does have some basic YouTube stuff, but definitely not enough that allows you to really streamline the entire process of basically creating videos, uploading them, all those types of things. And it's simply because I think either there are not enough people who will use that particular app, or using it with the current API that YouTube has is like a bit difficult to set up. But we came across someone who just was like, hey, do you want to use my YouTube Integromat app? And we were like, what? And so Kwan, who is a developer, I think that's his background, I believe. He also runs like a marketing agency. He basically started a YouTube channel, and in order to streamline his processes, he built a custom YouTube app inside of Integromat, which basically allows you to do all of the things that we wanted to do. For example, uploading descriptions, uploading thumbnails, making changes to thumbnails, and controlling it all from somewhere like Airtable. And so we checked it out, and it works perfectly. But what the most exciting thing about it was that he actually built this Integromat integration by himself. So obviously, when you are working with Zapier apps, Integromat apps, you actually have to, you can only really use what apps are available to you. But little did we know that was that you can actually jump into Integromat if you know how to code and create your own custom app for whatever it is that you want to do. So he created it for YouTube, which is absolutely game changing, because ever since he's launched it, we've just started setting up workflows, and I've now set up workflows that automatically updates all of my videos with updated thumbnails, descriptions, all that type of stuff. It's awesome. But one thing that he also did was he actually built a Facebook ads integration, which I actually think is even better in a lot of ways, because setting up Facebook ads using the Facebook Business Manager is like a huge pain. It's like the buggiest piece of software ever invented. And now you can basically control the uploading of ads and ad sets directly from inside of Integromat with the custom app that he created using the documentation in their API docs. And pretty exciting opportunity for anyone who can code and wants to build these custom apps to solve specific use cases.
So just for developers watching this, I think Connor and I pay more for the YouTube app on Integromat than we do for Integromat.
That is
So
true. I didn't realize that. Wow.
and honestly, money super well spent, right? There, yeah, like it's a no-brainer for me. And so I think this is an opportunity where again, this low code idea where Integromat has this ability to create apps actually like relatively simply. It'll do the OAuth for you. It'll do a lot of the mapping for you, create your API endpoints. And you just have to bring that API into these little kind of, a way that and then no coder can come in and put in the information. So you have to create these little modals. But otherwise, it's actually quite simple. No, I mean simple. It's not simple for us, but simple for developers. And it's an opportunity to say like, okay, there's this need on top of Integromat that clearly is worth it. Like we both pay way more for this than we do for Integromat itself. And there are a ton of apps that don't have as in-depth integrations as we'd like. Slack might be another. We think of YouTube. You mentioned Facebook ads. Like it's such an opportunity. And so, yeah, I think generally developers have fun with it. Definitely like a monetization opportunity. And for folks who are interested in this particular YouTube integration on Integromat, reach out to me or Connor, and we'll put you in touch with Kong. I actually put his YouTube channel. He's got like 2 videos, and this is where we actually learned about, the integration. And I remember reaching out to him and be like, "Hey, can you show me this?" And then we built it out. So generally, to developers, like, hey, this is a golden opportunity. So if you are one and are interested and want to talk to Kwang about how we built it, more than happy to put you in touch. And I am so excited that we have this.
For sure. And yeah, like you said, I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind is like, what if Integromat builds it at some point? Now, the thing is that oftentimes these are solving use cases that are so niche that it doesn't make sense for them to build it natively. Like, there's just not enough people that will use it. And I think it's the same thing with Zapier. Like, they're like certain apps that just don't make sense to build because, like, well, they're like going to be how many people they're going to use it. And so if you are already familiar with a niche or like a tool that is used quite commonly in like an industry that you're working in, like this here is like a prime opportunity. And like, yeah, like we pay more for this one integration than we do for the entire Integromat app. And it's still a great deal because it's going to save so much time and improve so many workflows that if you just look at it on an hourly basis, what you charge out on an hourly basis, you're going to make that back a lot. So definitely awesome stuff. Really excited to see what people do with this.
Yeah, and just we locked in a price for a year, and I imagine Kwang watching back this no code talk is going to be like, oh, maybe he should have charged us a little more, but we're locked in for a year. So get on it before Kwang realizes the value of what he's building, and get yourself if you are interested in YouTube or building out yourself. So this was my big learning of the last month. Connor, anything we add before we go over to our last item for 2021?
Nope, I think that covers it all.
Awesome. Cool. You know what I'm going to do before next table talk? I'm going to get like an animation that like swipes the agenda. Right? So like swaps the screen is going to look nice. Cool. So this is 2 things in one. The first thing I wanted to, this is kind of a trend that I'm seeing, which is folks explicitly asking for no code knowledge within jobs. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people are like, oh, that's so new or that's so weird, right? But when you think about it, like people want Salesforce experience, right? You can have a Salesforce admin job and there are hundreds of those. This is the emergence of those same types of jobs, right? So what's more interesting, I think, here is that this is under operations. So you can imagine, sorry, for context, this is Twitch looking for an operations coordinator and specifically asks for knowledge around Airtable, scripting, APIs. And, I think this is the beginning of folks saying like Airtable or Bubble or whatever Webflow is a specific need for a role in operations and that it's something that people are going to look for. Now, what I want to highlight here is also like folks are expecting like no coder as a job, and I don't expect that to ever happen, right? Folks want like better operations. They don't want like better no code tools, right? They have a goal here. It's like coordinating operations. By the way, to do that well at Twitch, you need to know no code tools like Airtable, and you need to have scripting. So folks, if you are interested, it's a little ironic that I'm promoting a Twitch role on a YouTube stream, but if you are interested in operations, Twitch, and Airtable, go ahead and apply to this operations coordinator role. Seems like a lot of fun. The Twitch team seems great, so highly recommend it.
And they're not the only ones. Like Netflix has been looking for people who have experience with tools like Stacker and Airtable and all those types of things. And it's just like a really exciting opportunity. Like obviously, like you said, like Salesforce is like a huge industry, like a high demand job. But like I still feel like with tools like Airtable and stuff like that, you're still pretty early in the mix, you know? Like for example, on the Unicorn Factory, I've seen like a huge increase for demand for like Airtable consultants or Webflow developers. So like this space is like clearly moving from like, oh, this is like a little thing that you can build like a little side project with or a prototype with, to no, some of the biggest companies in the world are using this to run their operations. And that is a huge opportunity for everyone who's already in this space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So get yourself a no code job. Get yourself, just play Airtable. It's one of the weird things about my job is that I wish I spent like 50 times more time in actual Airtable. So whenever I see a job that's like must know in-depth Airtable experience, I'm like, interesting. That sounds like a lot of fun. But no worries. I spent a lot of time in Airtable. I spent a lot of time writing scripts. No worries, folks. But I wish I had spent the vast majority of my week kind of building cool operation stuff. One day, maybe.
I have
One
a
day.
question for you around the Airtable, around your Airtable knowledge.
Go for it.
Out of the people that you know who are like more advanced in Airtable than you are, and you pretty much know most things, what are the things that they know that you don't know as well yet?
Okay, I think the main. Let me just kind of go into full screen mode here. It's an interesting question. We're doing an audible here. I think the main difference of like the way what you're asking is where would I spend more time in Airtable, or how to onboard Airtable. I think people underestimate the complexity of rolling out a workflow, right? So you have a way of working, right, which might be in Airtable and it might be poorly structured. It might be in another tool. You might have like 8 tools that are like managing the job, right? And I think a lot of people focus on like, let me build the Airtable base that I think is ideal, right? Which is easy. That's the easy part. The harder part is like, here are the people in the workflow. Here's what views they need. Here's how I make them like understand what those are, feel comfortable in the new workflow. Here's where we should start. Here's where we should continue improving. Here's like a script that I need to warn them about that they need to write. And here are the things about that script that they need to know before they embark on this massive project, right? So I think, the main challenge around Airtable and no-code tools generally is not like, here's how you configure the field. It's more, how do you map that workflow that you already have and exists to this new way of working that can evolve over time. And so, if you were to parachute me into this like very complex workflow, I would feel overwhelmed, not by the product itself, but by like, where do we start? Who's the right person? Who's going to like derail this project 4 months from now because that person only works in this other tool that I've never heard of and that we may be able to replicate or not. So what I would recommend to folks who are like, oh, I want to become an Airtable person or a no-code person is focus less on the tools themselves, but focus more on like change management, workflows, who are the important stakeholders and things like that. And that's things actually like interestingly, I'm not very good at. I love building Airtable bases, right? And I love writing scripts and I love, quirky workflows. But the bulk of the work is actually change management.
Hmm. Great. Yeah, makes sense.
I don't think people were expecting that answer. I think people were probably like,
I actually I've seen that with like Integromat as well. It's like, you can like learn every little thing, but what really separates out like people who are like good at Integromat from people who are like great at using Integromat is actually everything that happens around Integromat, you
right.
know? So no, that's a good answer. I
Like what are
fully
some things
agree.
that happen around Integromat? Like what are some examples? I'm curious.
Well, I've seen people build like pretty like huge workflows, and I'm kind of like, where do you even start with it? But it's because people kind of have like a good understanding of like how workflows and database structures as a whole works and how that all ties in together with the tool that you're using. And I think that a lot of people are really good. They have like good foresight to see how you should be planning and building things in a way that won't come crumbling down on you in 3 months'
Hmm.
time. And so I feel like a lot of the approaches that you take is quite similar. But no, I think that you pretty much summed it up in your
Yeah.
answer.
I have one example that I can. So I started at Airtable as a CSM, and this was before I remember who I was working with, but um, that client had dummy tables, right? So they had like content 2021, content 2021 H2 in two different table, all the same fields, just terrible base structure, right?
Mhm.
And I kept telling them like, hey, you have like two tables for the same information. That's really not like ideal. That's not good best practices for base structure. And they kept telling me like, I don't care. And it drove me
Mhm.
crazy, right? But they were like
Mhm.
really happy with their workflow, right?
Mhm.
So instead of like talking about their workflow and finding improvements, I kept like coming back to the base structure. I was like, no, you have to put that in one table. It doesn't make sense. Not realizing that like their workflow had so many bigger problems than duplicate tables, right? That's what I should have been focused on. And then eventually be like, hey, by the way, can we like put this in one table? And they would have been like, yeah, that's fine. Like that's where we are in terms of things that are painful in our workflow because we've solved all
Mhm.
the rest. So that was a long-winded answer to folks like worry about the workflow more than the tools, and the structure matters less, the details matter less. But when the details do matter, please come watch Automate All the Things because that's what I do care about. That's what I show up on the stream. And yeah, okay. So Connor, last thing here, we're gonna go after this. What can folks look to forward to in 2022 from you, from the no code community? Give us what's gonna happen in 2022.
Well, so just the no code community in general, like my predictions for 2022,
Whatever,
or
man. This is
what
an
I'm
audible.
looking.
We're off script now. This is
Okay.
You can give your
Oh,
predictions. You can talk about what you're gonna work on. Tell me whatever you want.
okay, so what I'm gonna work on, so I've got like three main projects that I'm gonna be focusing on at least for the first half of 2022. So number one is I'm rejigging my course on how to build marketplaces with Webflow, Airtable, and Zapier. That's number one. Number two is for the Unicorn Factory, I'm gonna work on building what's called the Freelancer Academy, where I basically want to teach freelancers how they can close more deals, all that kind of stuff. Take like a lot of the learnings from the different freelancers and basically help people convert more clients, because one of the big things that worked out really well in 2021 was like getting more leads. So I've taken part of that part of the funnel. It's quite repeatable, it's quite scalable.
Mm-hmm.
But like where we're like lacking a bit is like I need to make it easier for people who are just starting their freelance journey to like learn the ins and outs of getting started. So that's going to be a focus. And then of course we're also going to be working on Code Meets No Code, which is another big project that is going to hopefully get launched soonish, early 2022. I don't want to put dates out there just in case. But that's something that I'm looking forward to. It's going to be like focused at people who are already familiar with no code tools and really want to go from like no code to low code, really take things to the next level. That's something that I've personally been exploring with all my no code projects, and I've had such a good time with it. Like it's really like felt like I've made like huge progress in terms of what I can do. And so after us talking about it, we've decided to like take it further. And so I'm really excited about that as well. So those are the key things that I'm going to be focusing on. That's a lot, but I'm excited about it because I think it's going to be a lot of fun for everyone.
Yeah. No, and I've been super impressed with your low code skills over the last year. I remember you went from like, hey, like, what is the scripting thing to like, here's 200 lines of code that pretty much powers most of Unicorn Factory.
But yeah, I mean, and so many exciting opportunities. Like, I feel like no code tools are really great at getting you like 80% there. But then if you want to get those incremental additional steps that just allow you to do things, and there are like so many use cases. For example, if you want to like reduce your workload on Zapier, you can move simple workflows over to scripts. If you want to tap into APIs for tools that don't have integrations, you can do that there as well. And more importantly, what I personally found most exciting about all of this is that all of the things that I've learned about no code automation, I've been able to translate into code a lot faster than I expected because I'm familiar with how databases work. And so to now to say, hey, actually, it makes more sense just to write this in code is actually really exciting. And I think that there are like a lot of people out there who will probably get that excitement from learning aspects of coding that I got. So yeah, should be fun.
Yeah, likewise. So I'm working with you on this. So my number one for next year is definitely going to be Code Meets No Code. So currently it lives on Connor's website, but we have secured the Code Meets No Code domain, and we're adding it to our pile of domains. But I'm very confident that this will be a domain that we use and actually develop. So yeah, I'm super excited, and I think as someone who became a low coder over the last couple of years, I'm super excited. So that's gonna be number one for me. Number two is I'm curious to get what people think. So I've been rethinking my newsletter, and I want to create these like more approachable workflow-esque step-by-steps, right? Like how I create assets, how I manage my expenses. These are questions I get all the time. So I wanted to turn and create like how I workflows, right? And so that's actually going to be number two. So I'm going to turn my newsletter. Yeah, so I already have 4 scheduled where once a month it's going to be no code recap. Once a month is going to be me talking about a workflow and kind of detailing you, giving you access to the base I use or whatever tool I'm using, to the Zap, to the template, so you can go out and use it yourself and ideally improve on it, right? That's what I really want. I want people to automate all the things. And I run a channel called Automate All the Things, and I rarely have an opportunity to be like, here's what I automate and here's what it is. And then once a month have a guest kind of come right on the newsletter. So that's number two. And then number three is just like lots of amazing things happening at Airtable. I'm probably going to be moving to New York next year. So that's going to be a big move. Stay tuned for that. And hopefully I'll be able to stream from New York. We'll see what happens. But yeah, going to keep the stream going, going to keep the newsletter going. Code Meets No Code is my big project. And then I also have a full-time job at Airtable. So that's going to be my plans at 2022. And yeah, hopefully, well, not hopefully, I'm excited for No Code Talk to come back next month. Any questions from the chat? Let's leave it for a moment here. So there, Fraser would love to see a whole No Code Talk on Code Meets No Code. Sure. I mean, yeah, we'd love to come pitch Code Meets No Code. If folks are interested, drop your email on that Airtable scripts landing page from Connor's website, and stay tuned for an email in early 2022, probably, when we have our first course.
What you'd like to, let us know what you'd like to learn, like what APIs you'd like to work with. Like obviously we have our ones that we want to use, but if there's something that you want to learn specifically, then we can bake that into some of the content that we're creating. So throw that into the chat, or if you're watching this after the live stream, drop it into the comments, because we are looking for ideas. So any feedback that you can give us would be phenomenal.
Yeah, totally. Whether that's APIs or concepts or, workflows that you'd like built out, we are all yours. And even if you're like a developer who wants to help other people learn how to write code, and either that's resources or want to pitch in terms of recording content, man, we're gonna get all the help we can get. So Jeremy asked a question: Code meets no code. Is that JavaScript focused? Mainly, I would say. So, we know JavaScript. That's what we write in Airtable and jQuery in Webflow. So obviously the content that we create is going to be very JavaScript focused. That said, we hope, and this is like a true ambition, that most of the content eventually becomes submitted by the community. So if folks want to write Python scripts or provide resources for others to learn Python or any other programming language, we're all for it. So obviously we're going to start with things that we know and that we think we can speak confidently about. But the goal short term and medium term is truly have a community of low coders sharing information, sharing scripts, getting value, and giving back value for low coders.
Yeah. And also, just to be clear, it's like not like a coding thing. It's how you can use code to take your no code workflows to the next level. So I think in certain ways people are already doing it. So for example, with the multi-reference Zap inside of Zapier, you need to add a custom request step where you drop in a snippet of code that then allows you to send multi-reference data to Webflow. And so it will be a bunch of things like that. So not just will it be how to automate this with Airtable scripts, there'll be like, how can you do little custom things inside of Webflow? So we really want to have like a broad range of things that will be done. But again, we're gonna like let the community kind of drive it. We're obviously gonna have like a lot of community input as well. We'll be going over like things out there like the FinSuite consent cookies, stuff like that requires just a little bit of coding knowledge. And so overall, that's kind of the direction that we want to take with things. But yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting.
I could agree, and I'm excited to learn mainly from the community. Learn, a bunch of new things. So I'll teach as much as we can, and then we're going to hand it off to folks to teach us and to teach others. So, with those words, huge thanks, Megan, Jeremy, Fraser, Kyle, Colleen, as always, Penny, I saw in the chat. Thanks so much for joining. I've got 2 more streams this month. Next week we have Zapier. Taylor Halliday from the R&D team is talking to us about Zapier transfers. And then 2 weeks I have Elif Hees, which is a YouTuber, and we're going to show how to create a Airtable marketing pipeline. It's a little fuzzy what we're going to cover, but it's going to be fun. We're going to talk marketing and no code. And those are the last streams of the year. I'll be back in 2022. Connor, we're going to be back in 2022. Huge thanks to everyone for joining. Huge thanks to you, Connor, for coming on. And to a great New Year's, holidays. Have fun, folks. And I'll see you, Connor, back next year.
Sounds good. See you and goodbye.
Bye, y'all.